for listening to episode number 11 of the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Creta Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for following your curiosity, which led you to this podcast. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, a disclaimer. As always, I am not a therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support, such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Like every other episode, let's begin with a couple of quotes. The first one, your present circumstances do not determine where you can go. They merely determine where you start. The second is making a retreat so as to advance better. As I prepared for this episode, I wanted to be sure to first express my gratitude here at the beginning of a new year for the beautiful and warm reception the Estranged Heart podcast has received since its arrival out in the world on Halloween of last year. You've opened your arms and hearts to welcome the Estranged Heart, and for that I'm forever grateful. So many of you have reached out and connected. Thank you to those of you who have. Thank you for sharing your stories and your estrangement experiences with me. I'm always deeply, deeply honored when others allow their vulnerability to show, and I hold that with deep reverence and confidentiality. I will be sharing some of these stories, those that I've been granted permission to share, in the coming year of 2022. And I know our community will find value in hearing these stories. Number one, to let you know you're not alone, and number two, you may find something about one or all of these stories that feel like someone's telling your story. And if that's not the case, you may also just find valuable bits of information and things that may have worked for someone else that might work for you. Or you may find places where others have gotten stuck, and you may find yourself there and want to know how to move forward and out of that. And hopefully you'll be able to gather some ideas on how to do that as this podcast continues to evolve over the coming 363 days, because we're on January 2nd of 2022. So I again thank you, and I am just so humbled by your welcome. Thank you again. So today's episode, based on my experience in the estrangement world, I knew there was a need for a new and different perspective, yet was apprehensive in putting it out into the world, so to speak. After all, sometimes different is not received with open arms. So I took some advice from a wise one who once told me, and I quote, "Do something to make room for those who are less inclined to step up and be loud in saying, 'I need something different.' Provide a space for those people, those who desire to do things differently and who wish to break the chains of the same old, yet might need guidance and support on how to do that. For when you have the courage to stand apart, you create something new, something filled with potential and possibilities." End quote. And that's kind of where we're starting off this new year, is I'm encouraging you to hold that tender place in your heart that's hurting. It needs to be acknowledged and validated and allowed to exist. I'm not telling you to take away that hurt and pain, or that you shouldn't feel it, or that you should numb out, or that you should stuff it under the rug, or anything like that. It is a part of you, and it needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be allowed to exist. I am only offering a suggestion to entertain something different in a way that helps you to get out of being stuck in the sadness, in the grief, in the anger, in all of the emotions that come with estrangement. I'm asking you to entertain allowing something different to come forward to help you to move through your emotions of estrangement and into a place of healing, whether that means healing for just yourself or healing of the relationship with your estranged loved one. Regardless of that, just sit with the idea of entertaining something different. And that's what today's episode is about. The title of the episode today, in losing them, I found myself really just accurately describes my estrangement experience. While it was not a conscious thing on my end to do something different, it was forced upon me with the estrangement. It nonetheless allowed me to come back home to myself, to regroup, and reconsider where I was at in my life and how I wanted to move forward and what that meant. And sometimes it takes losing something or someone to realize and recognize the value that person or thing had in your life, and or the value and purpose of your own life, right? So I tend to look at loss as a beginning. And again, I say this on every episode, it seems like. Again, I was not at this place when I was freshly in the middle of my new estrangement experience. I was not able to be there. And so when I tell you these things, I'm not sharing them to shame you if you're not yet there. I'm hoping that you'll just, kind of like, what's that old saying, or the saying that some folks talk about is like, just put a pin in it, right? So you can come back to it. Put a little X on this little spot in your life journal where you can come back to it and review it when you're ready. You may not be ready to move on yet, and that's okay. That's also a part of the grieving process, right? Everybody grieves differently and for different lengths of time. However, I do think it's important to recognize when we are grieving with purpose and getting stuck in the grief. Those are two very different things. And sometimes it's really, really hard to understand how to differentiate between the two, right? So I'm hoping that the things that I am going to go over today in today's podcast will help you to just think about some things. And if you are in that place where you're ready to make some changes and to move forward through your grief and on with your life, perhaps these will be some actionable steps that you can take. So, in doing some research for this episode, I was astounded at what popped up when I, went back to Mr. Google and looked up the word retreating. And what I found were very few things that held retreating as in reverence, in a way that to achieve something good. Instead, what came up were many references to war and winning at all cost. And I believe that this is one of the reasons, and again, one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the reasons why estrangement can last for an especially long period of time. Standing at odds or being at war with ourselves and or others rarely leads us to loving and kind behaviors, both of which are required for connection. And so I thought that was very interesting, and wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. So what did it mean to lose them in order to find myself? I think moms have a really difficult time when it comes to knowing who they are, because we give so much of our lives to our children, and a lot of moms identify who they are as simply being a mom. And as with all things in life, there needs to be a healthy balance. And when we go too far to one extreme, we lose the other side. And in this case, when we're talking about parenting our children, a lot of moms go way to the other extreme in giving every ounce of their life to their children. And so when the children go off to school, or it's empty nest syndrome and they go off to college, or they get married and start living on their own with their partners, or you end up in estrangement, you don't know what to do with yourself because you don't know yourself. You have no idea. And it's absolute, trauma and, oh my God, what do I, everything from what do I do on a daily basis to what do I want for my life over the next year or 5 years. Women are completely dumbfounded sometimes when I talk with them, these moms, about who they are. They have no idea because their lives have been so wrapped up in their children. And that can be everything from helicopter moms, overly involved in the middle of everything with their children, to also moms like me. I was not the helicopter mom, except when it came to control, right? And having, wanting to control everything because I wanted to protect and make sure everything was going to be okay. So my way of doing that in the world was to control everything, and to fix everything and make everything right and take care of everything. And so when my children were not there, I didn't know what to do. Well, how do I control anything if there's no one here to control? And so it can go either way. So I lost myself. And when they left my life through the estrangement, and then my friends started falling away, retreating was forced upon me. So I took that time. I didn't consciously set out and said, I'm going to take this time and I'm going to work on myself and I'm going to find myself. And I did, none of that happened. It was desperation. It was, everything from, oh my God, I have to figure out a way to make this stop hurting. And what do I do from here, to, flat out, fuck it. What the hell else am I going to do? So I did by no means set out to, consciously and with intent to do this. And that's what I'm trying to help moms to do now. right? And the same thing with adult children, estranged adult children. I think it's important, and if you've chosen to estrange from your parents or your mom or whatever loved one that you've chosen to estrange from, is to reflect back in your time of retreat. And your time of retreat is your time of solitude away from this person in your life. And I know that a lot of estranged adult children have already done that. They've been doing that, and that is oftentimes what has led up to making the decision to estrange, is because they know they have to find themselves, and they're not able to do that while in a relationship with their loved one. So I'm talking today because I'm hoping that some of these things you can do with conscious intent to make things happen in a different way for you. So let's remember that 2022 is going to look just like 2021 unless you get out of your comfort zone. It is. And whether that's, it's the new year, start of a new year, when most people make, New Year's resolutions and want to change things, and they're all gung-ho, and yes, we're going to make these changes, until those changes require stepping out of that comfort zone and doing things that are not comfortable and doing things that are less than ideal. But that's how we change, right? The comfort zone is, comfortable. It's a place where we know what is, regardless of how much we like or dislike what is. And the unknown can be scary, right? It's it's scary to not know what's going to be on the other side, to take a risk. And it's, I hear oftentimes from estranged parents that, I'm not changing. If they want anything different, then they need to change. And I think that comes from a place of fear of the unknown for the parent, and the fear of taking a risk that if I put myself out there, if I retreat, if I back away, they're going to think that I don't care. They're going to think this, that, and the other thing. And so they project all of these things out there about their perception of the unknown. And by retreating, oftentimes we have to take a step back before we can take a step forward. So, it's a change. It's something that most humans do not do well with, change of any kind. Yet to stop a cycle, someone must change. And that cycle can be, you're either stuck in it, and it's this continuous ongoing, forever ongoing estrangement, or this forever ongoing back and forth, on again, off again estrangement, or this, they come back and they, are screaming and cursing at you, and you're screaming and cursing at them, or you're crying and sobbing, and they don't want to hear that. When you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, you get the same results over and over and over again. And isn't that the definition of insanity? Right? So in order to change, somebody's got to stop doing what they've been doing. And I'm here to tell you, if you're waiting on the other person to do that, you're going to be waiting a very long time. The only person you have control over is you. Period. End of story. So, you can either be anxious about the unknown, or stuck in the depression, dooming what hasn't ever happened yet. Or you can say, I'm going to take a step back, regroup, reflect, and figure out a different way of doing this for me. Again, it was my nature to want to fix everything. As a single mom, I was in career, and the jobs that I had were all about taking control and fixing things and making sure if I couldn't fix it, that someone else was there to fix it. And so it was really hard for me to step back and let go of the control of fixing, right? I had to let it go. And so, when we retreat, and I think that this is another piece to why retreating is something that's not liked or encouraged or wanted in any way, is that, retreat, and just like the word vulnerability, they're words that cause some people to recoil. Yet those two words, vulnerability and retreat, are powerful when they're held with reverence and recognition of the possibilities that they hold. We're conditioned in this culture to be constantly moving forward. Go, go, go. Take action, take action. And in the moments of all this taking action, basically what we're doing is just mowing over everything in our path. We're not consciously focused on taking very focused and intent action steps. There is value in slow and steady. What they always say, slow and steady wins the race, right? Well, you may have a different opinion. I can just tell you that what worked in my case was not the race and the forcing to make it happen and get to the end to be the first person at the end. And there's power in knowing when to engage with each one of those things. There's power in knowing when to engage in taking action and when to engage in retreating. Again, mine was forced upon me. I'm hoping that by what I'm sharing here today, you will take intentional steps to know when to take action and when to retreat. And there's also a difference, I want to say too, in retreating to shrink yourself and retreating to learn how to stand within your own power, your self-power, right? Not power over someone, but your own power from within. And I think that some people do retreat too often, but it is in a shrinking way, in a way of, I don't matter, I'm not important, and so I'm just going to go over here and kind of, shrink a little bit and sit over here in the corner and hope that no one sees me. That there's not power in that. That's giving away your power. And so I think it's important to recognize the differences in those. So you might be asking, well, okay, fine, I'll retreat. What do I do? What exactly am I supposed to do when I'm in this retreat? Well, think about the word retreat. When you think about that, to me, what comes to mind is going on a retreat. What does one do when they go on a retreat? They typically take life at a slower pace. They are either by themselves or with few people, right? And they're working on something. Writers go on retreats to write without the noise and constant interference of, the phone's ringing and the TV going and people talking and things like that. There are people who go on retreat and they, for self-care retreats, and they get massages and they, go and do all of those things. Think about that if you're considering retreating in order to be able to move forward and hopefully into reconciliation with your children. Retreating, taking time for reflection. It's near impossible to move forward in a different way without knowing where you are now and where you once were, right? Taking time to decide to move forward with, like I said, that conscious intent, instead of, I don't know, the image that comes to mind is just blindly throwing shit against the wall, hoping to see what will stick, right? That's kind of how we move through life when we're just constant go, 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 without stopping to reflect about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, things like that. So I think it's important to reflect. I did a lot of journaling when I was in the middle of my retreating. I did a lot of walks in nature. I got myself, I started looking at things, but not incessantly, on YouTube, and I started reading books, and just started trying to take note of what I was doing in the moment, being really present in the moment, instead of 3 months down the road, 3 years down the road, or 3 years behind me, or 3 months behind me. Really trying to stay present in the current. And started trying to do things for myself. And it was really, really hard. It was really hard because I grew up with, if you do things for yourself, you're being selfish. And I heard that a lot as an adult from my partners and my children, that I was a very selfish person because by nature, I tended to do things for myself when it came to my career. Not necessarily self-care and a lot of things like that, but when it came to my career, I did a lot of things that I wanted to do, and it was looked at as being selfish. And so when I went into my retreating during my estrangement time, it was really hard to not think, oh my gosh, everyone's going to think that I'm being really, really selfish here, but I had to do it, and I stuck with it. And there were days when I did not retreat, and I wanted to, just sit and watch YouTube all day long about estrangement things and watch presentations and, all of that. And it just made me nuts. And so I had to get out of that. So the next day I'd do I did the 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And then I got back up the next day and went 2 more steps forward, and just continued to try to move forward that way. And when by the end of that retreat period, and that's different for everyone. I don't know that I can really say how long that period was for me because it was forced upon me. But it seemed like forever. It seemed like forever. I know it wasn't now, but that's what it seemed like at the time. And at times it didn't seem like I was ever going to come out of it, but I did. And I think that when you can go into it with conscious intent and you can be supported and you find your support system, and a healthy support system, right? Because I think, the old saying, misery loves company. And I think if we rely solely on, commiserating our miseries with others all the time, then that's not doing us a lot of good. It's not doing us good in healthy ways and getting us to get out of being stuck and moving forward. So in the end, my kids gave me a gift through the estrangement. I look at it as a gift now. I did not when I was in the middle of it. I did not. So please don't come at me with your comments about this is not a gift. I know when I was in the middle of it, it was not a gift. I did not look at it as that. But I do look at it as that now. Because by taking that time to focus on me, I got really clear about what I wanted in my life, how I wanted to live my life. I no longer wanted to live my life just constantly moving forward, go, 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 go. I no longer found value in that. I wanted to take care of myself. I wanted to have things for me, things that brought me happiness and joy. And I had to figure out what that was. I didn't know anymore. I had no idea. So I had to figure out what brought smiles to my face? What made me giggle? What smells smelled good to me, aromas? What sights did I enjoy seeing? What kind of energy did I feel when I walked into a room? Did I feel like I belonged and I was welcomed? Or did I feel like, it was nasty and cutthroat and that type of thing? I had to really get really clear. And that's what the retreat allowed me to do. And from there, well, for me, I did it in conjunction with my therapy. And my therapist worked with me as well to help me through that and help me to figure those things out. And that's what I also work with when I work with estranged moms, in helping them to figure that out. And when I work with estranged adult children, I help them to figure out what it is that they want. What kind of a relationship do they want to have with their loved one, with their parent. And sometimes that's, we think we may know, but we really don't when we get down, we really start digging into it, because we're hurt, and that hurt can lead us to a lot of decisions that we may not necessarily actually want, but it's the only way we know how to get temporary relief from the hurt. And I'm encouraging finding ways to get to relief that will be lasting and not temporary. So that is how I found value and purpose in retreating, because I came home to myself through that time period. And I think it's essential to do something along these lines in order to heal yourself and potentially heal the relationship with your estranged adult child or your estranged parent. And so with that, I will close. I will say this one more thing. I do think, in coming home to yourself, when you can get to know you then allow and make space for other people to get to know themselves in their own way instead of through your eyes and your expectations. And I will say that is one of the complaints that I hear a lot from estranged adult children. And that's that my parents expect me to be this person or that or the other thing, through their eyes. And all they want to do is to be themselves. And it's really hard to be yourself if you don't know who you are. So this brings episode number 11 to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent, and that you're able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your estrangement journey, wherever you may be on the estrangement or reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, and perhaps leaving a positive review. And lastly, again, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out via email to theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Again, theestrangedheart@gmail.com. Until next time.